I read 8 books in October. Some were really great, some were just grand, and then there was one little bit of a disaster. We'll get to that later, so let's chat about them. It's easier to hold them today because I brought a basket up here for thinking. So let me start with the winners. I had 4 4-star books, and to me that's a pretty solid reading month. These are the ones that I would recommend without any hesitation. So this book I listened to on audio, so I don't have a physical copy. It was the first book in the Murderbot Diary series written by Martha Wells. If you haven't heard of Murderbot, where have you been? These books essentially follow a security android. So he's part robot with some human tissue as well. And he has essentially hacked his own system so that he can have free will. He's supposed to be out there murdering, but essentially this poor guy just wants to sit at home and watch some space soap operas. Pretty relatable, to be honest. What I really liked about this book was Murderbot's voice. It's sarcastic, it's anxious, it's socially awkward, and it genuinely just doesn't understand people, and once again, relatable. The whole novella is quite short. I think it's about 150 pages, so to listen to it, I listened to it in one afternoon essentially. It's really punchy and fast paced, and it doesn't really waste any words. The plot essentially involves Murderbot protecting this team while they're out on a mission, and things go wrong and there's corporate conspiracy, and of course there is, because it's sci-fi. As sci-fi goes, I know a lot of us find it really difficult and intimidating, but this one is really accessible. It's funny and it's surprisingly emotional as well. It's basically what if your anxiety had a robot body and murder capabilities. The next 4-star read is a book that I have been threatening to read/reread. I never finished it the first time I read it. For many, many years, I read this book, or part of it, in school when I was 15 and 16. I'm now 36. I decided it was probably time to go back and actually read it. So I'm talking, of course, about Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I'm actually reading the classics, can you believe it? So I went into this remembering the basics. Governess, brooding man, big twist. And what I wasn't prepared for was how angry this book is in some ways. Jane is essentially a bit furious for about 400 pages, and I say good for her. So this is gothic and it's romantic and it's much more feminist than I was expecting for a book written in 1847. What really surprised me about this book is how modern Jane feels as a character. She's constantly pushing back against the limitations placed upon her as a woman in this time, and particularly as a woman without any money or status. There's this really incredible passage where she talks about how women feel just as men do and need to exercise their faculties just like men do, which of course is obvious to us now, but back then this would have been incredibly progressive. So as we expect from a lot of classics, this is quite dense. Bronte definitely takes her time, and there are chapters that probably could have been just an email, and the ending has some choices that involve a bit of Christianity and missionaries and coincidences that just felt to me very Victorian novel, and maybe not necessarily in a good way. But that said, 4 stars, it's a classic for a reason. The prose is gorgeous. Jane is a brilliant character. There's so much moody gothic atmosphere. Honestly, so glad I finally pick this one up. If you like atmospheric historical fiction and morally complicated romance, or you just want to understand why everyone's obsessed with sad men in big houses, Jane Eyre is the one. Next 2 4-star books then I'm kind of going to talk about together because they're part of the same series. One is the ending of one trilogy and one is the beginning of another. So the ending of one trilogy was this one. It was Blood of Dragons by Robin Hobb. Yeah, I'm talking about Robin Hobb again. What of it? And then I started the very final trilogy in the whole realm of the Elderling series. So I read Fool's Assassin, and I gave them both 4 stars, but this is definitely a superior 4-star to this one. I'm obviously quite far into the series now, so I don't want to give spoilers, but if you haven't read Robin Hobb, if you haven't read these books and you feel like dipping a toe into slow character driven fantasy, these books are the pinnacle for me of that. Excuse me, I've been calling this a trilogy. It's a quadrilogy, so this is the final book in the only quadrilogy in this series, and this quadrilogy follows these creatures as they journey up this river to find this city that we're not even really sure exists. I found this whole quadrilogy, maybe a little bit too slow, but still loved it because it retained the magic of what I love about Robin Hobb's writing. Her prose is just brilliant. I love how there are little Easter eggs that tie us into the rest of the world of her books. I love how she doesn't rush things and she has confidence that the reader will take their time. I love that she doesn't give everything to us on a platter. Like, we have to think about things. So we got all of that in this book. I think the plot was probably a little bit weaker in this quadrilogy than the overall overarching series. Still enjoyed it though, still a 4-star read. And then I immediately jumped into, of course, Fool's Assassin, which is the first book in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. It is the 14th book in the whole realm of the Elderling series. I love Fitz as a character. He's probably one of my favourite characters, not just in fantasy, but just in literature. Overall, of all the books I've read in my whole life. I've spent so long with Fitz, I really feel like he's a friend at this stage, and we followed him over the course of his lifetime, from when he was an abandoned orphan right through to when he became an assassin and an adult, and now he's a little bit older and should be wiser, but is he? Hobb really writes aging so well. He's tired, he's dealing with loss, and he's trying to fill roles that he's not really sure he can live up to. So both 4-star books. Hobb is unmatched for me, honestly. I bet you can't wait for me to stop talking about her. I probably never will. She's incredible. So we're shifting now into 3-star territory. These books aren't bad. They're grand. I think 3 stars is a decent book, but I read them, I finished them, and honestly probably just won't really think about them too much again. I was feeling some cozy autumnal vibe, so I picked up a book that has really been doing the rounds lately. The whole series has, but this is the first one in the series, and the book I'm talking about is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is exactly what you would expect. It's a cozy small town romance about a woman who moves to a small town after she's essentially inherited a cafe. She doesn't really know what she's doing, but she's here to slow down and to live a slower life. It definitely delivered on the vibes. It's warm, it's sweet, it's cute, but honestly there's no real conflict. Like, the main sort of conflict in this book, I was like, just get over yourselves, just get on with things. It is a bit spicy as well, so if you're not into that, maybe avoid this one. The romance is cute, but it is incredibly predictable. There's a lovely little animal sidekick introduced throughout this book as well, which is always something that I love. The small town is quirky in like a Hallmark way, and I never once really worried about anything. 3 stars because it's perfect as a little comfort read, but it didn't do anything that surprised me or stuck with me. There's no incredible character development or anything. We kind of get what we know we're going to get going into this book. It's not a criticism, it just is what it is. I finished it, felt cozy for an hour, and then just moved on. If you want something light and autumnal to read on a cozy autumnal day, then yeah, I recommend picking this one up. But if you want depth and complexity, I would say look elsewhere. My next 3-star then is a really infamous book, and I have just never read it, even though I've read many books by this author. The book I read is Carrie by Stephen King. I did see the film many years ago, so I definitely knew what this one was about, but just had never read the source material. This is King's first published novel from 1974, and it's about a teenage girl with telekinetic powers who is essentially bullied mercilessly in school, is really othered, and eventually she snaps, and good for her. And here's the thing, I can see why this book would have been groundbreaking in 1974. The structure is interesting. It's told through a mix of narrative and news articles and book excerpts from after the events. The prom scene is genuinely just so tense and horrifying and tragic, but reading it now in 2025, it does feel dated. King leaps in with his objectification of women's bodies, which is, you know, always lovely. His portrayal of teenage girls is not great. There's a lot of focus in this on bodies, which really feels very much like man writing women. You know what I mean? And I felt like Carrie herself didn't really get enough interiority. We're told she's bullied and we witness the abuse that she survives, but it does feel a bit rushed, I think. The build-up is quick, the aftermath is quick, and I just think I wanted more time with the actual story. It's not that long, so I don't think necessarily that the book length is wrong. I just think maybe for me it was paced a a bit weirdly. But look, this is a debut, so it's going to have its problems. It's from 1974. It's going to have its problems. 3 stars. It's a classic for a reason. It's influential. The prom scene really lives up to the hype, but it's not King's best work. And if you're new to him, I would start elsewhere. Who is this for? Well, I would say it's for King completists, people interested in horror history, and or if you just want a quick dark read for spooky season. And my last 3-star read then is a new release that probably once again needs no introduction. We're talking Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. So this book is a book that follows 2 characters as they go down into the depths of hell to retrieve a professor that has been overseeing their studies in their postgraduate program. I really wanted to love this because I feel like The Poppy War is probably one of my favourite fantasy trilogies, and after that we've had Babel, which I thought again was fine. I liked what she did with it, I just didn't love it. And of course Yellowface, which I actually DNF'd, so I was feeling a little bit hit and miss about this one. I would love if Kuang returned to her fantasy roots. I do understand the intrigue and why these books should be written too. They're just not my favourite when I compare them with The Poppy War. This feels quite experimental. It plays a little bit with form and translation and meaning, so it's got a pretty cool magic system, and I did appreciate what it was trying to do intellectually. A lot of people have said that they felt a bit too stupid to read this book, and I get where they're coming from because I definitely didn't understand all of the theories and different things that Kuang referenced within this book, but for the most part I was just able to kind of get on with it, or if I was really interested in something I looked it up, and so I learned some things from this book for sure. But emotionally, for me personally, it just didn't land. It's cold and a little bit distant, and I never really fully connected with the characters. 3 stars because Kuang's prose is still brilliant and there are so many ideas within this book that are fascinating. So I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine, but it's probably not a book that I'm going to think about all too much once I put it down after this video. So this book would be great if you love metafiction or experimental fiction and you're really into science and magic, then this would probably work a bit more for you than it did for me. Personally, I don't think it's essential, Kuang, but each their own. And then we're going to talk about the book that really disappointed me this month. I don't often give 2 stars, but when a book for me just doesn't work, it just doesn't work, and that's that. This book really was significantly hyped. It's a new release and it's the first time I've read from this author. The book that I'm talking about is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. So this is at its core a horror novel about dealing with a violent, abusive patriarch, and it's meant to be this intense, claustrophobic exploration of trauma and trauma cycles. So you hear that and then you read the book, and I think there's a bit of a disconnect there. I really did want to love this. I've heard a lot of people really raving about it, but for me it just didn't personally hit. It felt a bit gimmicky, and I appreciated what Cassidy is trying to do here, but just for me personally it didn't work. I felt like the pacing was off, the characters just didn't click. It just felt really silly and really camp and a little bit too over the top for me. I just felt like it meandered, and it's like it's not the longest book in the world, but it just felt like it went on forever. There were glimmers of atmosphere here, but overall it really felt like a slog for me. 2 stars. If you've read it and loved it, let me know what it is that I missed. So that was my October. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments below, and also let me know what your favourite read from October this year was. Or indeed, let me know what your worst read of October was. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe watch this video next if you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, pals. Take care, and I'll chat to you next week in another video. Bye bye.